Hey everybody, welcome to our summit recap. Next slide. Our agenda is networking, which we just finished, then welcome and announcements, presentations, and our closing. Welcome from the Florida chapter. We're glad you're here. Got just a couple announcements. We would love to have you stay and be an active member in our chapter. If you want to join or renew, please let us know or go to stc.org. We've also got some volunteer roles open if you want to help out or expand your network. Let us know if you're interested. I also run the
Sorry, cat. We're good.
Cat. Oh, silly cats.
Mhm.
We also have our newsletter, Memo to Members. I'm always looking to publish any articles that come my way. So email me at newsletter@stc-orlando and I'll orlando.org, excuse me. And I will be sure to publish whatever you send me. Also got a LinkedIn page and Discord server. If someone could pop those links in chat for me, please. Thank you. Don't know if we have any other platforms, but we do have other stuff coming up. Our next virtual networking meeting is not on Discord. Oops, I forgot to change that. It is on Zoom. If you want to join us, our next one is October 9th at 7:30 Eastern. Our ADCO or Administrative Council is also looking for volunteers, or if you just want to see how the chapter works, you can join us October 3rd at 7:30 Eastern. Our October chapter meeting is on the 17th, 6:30 to 8:30, as we learn more about TechCom tools. If anyone has a job at their company needs to be filled or would like to find a new one, please contact our employment chair, Nicole Lundquist. Her email is on screen for you. So we've got our Washlines presentations. A quick about for this, seeing as we're not actually in a physical space. This used to be in a room and we'd have a physical wash line from one end of the room to the other with little signs on it that were clipped with clothespins that would tell you which topic was where. And we're bringing it back in a slightly different way for an online environment. So about the summit. The International TechCom Summit was in Bloomington on May 17th to 19th. It brings together like-minded individuals to grow their knowledge of the technical communication field. It was first held in 1953, and in the years that followed, it garnered a reputation for being the foremost destination for technical communicators who wanted to learn, network, and stay up to date on the latest industry trends. Here is a little bit of a sneak peek at what happened at Summit in modern times. We had the Mall of America right nearby, and we got to see the attractions and hang out together. Had some good meals at a couple of their restaurants, and you might be able to see a familiar face up at the top right with a bunch of dice pretending to be mad that someone had to write "do not eat" on the box lid. So we've got our presenters today. We've got Bethany Oclod, Delaney Gunnell, and Marilyn Mugan. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing anything. Please do correct me on that when you have a chance if I'm wrong. And John Clement. First, we're going to have a quick video from Jessica Krieger on receiving the Associate Fellow Award. After that, Bethany will start, and we'll go in order from there.
All right, bear with me. I realize I need to screen share again with sound, so one moment, please. Hopefully that will go seamlessly. All right. So Angela, if you'd be willing to read Jessica's slide, and then the next slide will have the video.
Jessica Krieger, one of our own chapter members, presented a session at the summit and also was awarded the prestigious Associate Fellow Award for her extensive service in STC.
Hello, it's Jessica Krieger. The theme of this year's summit was TechCom in Action, and the summit flew by in a fantastic flurry of fun functions. The highlights of my summit experience were receiving the Associate Fellow Award, giving a presentation about the synchronicities between technical communications and marketing, and serving on a panel of technical editing experts. Additionally, it was wonderful to meet many of my fellow STC Florida members for the first time in person. I was also pleased to meet a large group of students from the future technical communicators, including my own mentee. The main topics of my presentation were the overlap between marketing and technical content, how to repurpose content, developing a strategy, multi-channel marketing, and measuring costs and results. It was so nice to see you in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I hope to see you next year.
Oh, I hadn't pre-watched the video. That was so nice. I know Jessica wanted to be here, but she's actually embarking on a new challenge as as an instructor at a university. So she was a little busy tonight. Whoop, let me go to the next slide. All right, if you don't mind, Julia, I think I'm up next.
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
Perfect. So I'm recapping Building Up to an AI Prompt Management Team by Justin Kaufman. This was a really detailed session with a lot of different slides, so I'm going to hit the highlights and the things that stood out to me. And since we've got some time, we might do a little playing around with something that he shared. But I also wanted to share the Google Drive link. I've uploaded everything that I captured slides for at Summit. So here's the link to this presentation specifically. Don't look ahead. I don't want you to get spoilers for what I'm about to share with you. But I also have all of the other handouts that I captured at Summit. So if you weren't able to join and you want to see what was covered on some of the topics that we aren't addressing tonight, you are more than welcome to grab any of the slides or handouts that I was able to capture. This isn't everything from Summit, but it's everything that was made available to me through the app or when I followed up with speakers. So there's some really good stuff in there, even if we're not covering tonight, and I recommend checking it out if you're interested in learning some new things. So getting into the AI prompt management team. This was from Jason Kaufman, who is the president and principal AI content strategy advisor at Arrivo. And his presentation was all about overviews of AI prompt management. So starting kind of high level, how instructions work, knowledge sharing, how to be ethical. And then he really gets into a step-by-step guide to how to build an AI prompt management team with real world examples. And also he had like a call to action, like join our AI community. So if you're not all in on all things AI, I still think there's value to see what the conversation is about for technical writers and how we can sit in this space. And I thought this was especially helpful because I think I mentioned during networking, my company is definitely embracing AI as a way to build efficiencies, build better customer experiences, and really just see what we can bring to the future. And I think there's a great opportunity for technical writers to be at the center of how AI is used, not just as people who create prompts, but also as people who create good content for AI to use. A lot of the things we see in AI that doesn't work very well is often because there's not the best data going in. That's not the only challenge, but it is one that's real. So I thought this was something that could be relevant not just now, but as we look to the future on what are additional things we can provide when people talk AI. So they're not thinking AI is happening to technical writers, but AI is something the technical writers can actively contribute to and bring value, especially on the ethics side as well. I think that's a strength of our profession, and especially for those who are in STC, something we've thought of as an organization. So that's my small soapbox. I'll put it aside and go over the slides, but just wanted to share that kind of perspective that I have. So when we think about prompting, that's really that back and forth where you put in AI, give me a response on this, whether that's ChatGPT, Gemini, or any of the other variety of ones that have popped up here, there, and everywhere. So they really started with grounding on when you're creating a good prompt, which is essentially almost like a good question. If you were interviewing a SME and saying, I need this information, the better you frame your question, the more context you provide, the better you're going to get a response. So their best practices really align with what we do well as technical writers. If you see the breakdown, so writing clear instructions, providing reference text. If you're having something complex, bringing it to smaller subtasks. I like the giving it time to think, so making sure you're giving time for reliability. They also recommend using external tools. So where there's something specific you're trying to get at with the AI, using plugins, any of the specific other chat GPT, not just chat GPT, but GPTs. Gemini, they're called gems, by the way. Those are their custom GPT versions, which I think is actually a super cute name. But thinking about how you can use tools to be even more effective. And then the test and evaluate piece is something that I think we've always done as people who do documentation, making sure that we're producing something of quality that's going to be useful for the person who needs it, and not just, wow, look at all these great words that are put together, because I know sometimes people can be dazzled by the output. I was just going to pause. For the folks here, have you done some prompting in your life, whether at work or for personal use? You can answer in the chat if you don't want to speak up on the call.
I definitely have. I've had some fun with it. And I see Jessica in chat not as often as I should.
Oh, should Jessica? Don't worry. It's you're not wrong to not use it all the time. Anyone else? Afraid? Excited? Too busy?
I've dabbled with it, and it's fun. It was I've used it both for like creative projects, like, hey, I have these plot ideas. Tell me what you think of it, ChatGPT. Whether it be for just creative writing or like even Dungeons and Dragons character stuff. And of course, generating images is very fun as well. So love ChatGPT.
Yeah, Julia's smiling because that's a callback to an inside joke where we've done some crafting of funny AI images to send to each other as a prank. So ask about that offline or in the chat if you're interested. So aside from just general best practices, they get to the general practice of what makes a structured, effective prompt that'll guide the AI. So thinking about how it's going to be targeted and how you're going to get a response that's useful to you. So they break it into this Tracy model, which is task, role, audience, create, and intent. And for those who've done any sort of structured authoring as a technical writer, yeah, some of the specifics are a little different, but gosh, it really looks a lot like structured authoring, right? Where you're thinking about how the information fits together, who it's for. So I think there's really a clear alignment here, but it's the sort of work we're already doing when we're thinking about how we're crafting documentation, what needs to be done, who is it for, who's it coming from, who's it for, what's the output, what medium should be in, and then what's the purpose or goal. Those, of course, aren't the only considerations, but giving that'll help you really refine what you're looking for. Another thing they shared was a specific GPT, a custom GPT called Shelly Strong, that was designed to help you with prompting. So it's essentially an AI to help with other AI. And Julie, if I have your blessing, I figured we can pull it up and try it for a couple minutes.
Sure.
All right, one moment. Will I open Shelly Strong? And I'll put the link in here. It's just available. Anyone who has a ChatGPT account can use it. So I was going to put Jessica on the spot. You were talking about AI prompts in our networking meeting and how make it more concise was helpful. Are there things that you would want to have a prompt for?
Gosh, I was literally just thinking of the gobbledygook that I see in some of the legacy content, but it's usually
Yeah.
about accounting and and the sentences are like really, really long, and we couldn't figure out what they meant. But in like the real world outside of my help system, no. Whatever can you make
Yeah.
more concise?
Complex, would you say accounting
Yeah, there we go.
information? Anything else that would be make it concise? I'm just trying this quickly since we're doing it live, but
Yeah, yeah.
and you guys can see my screen, right?
Oh, yeah.
Perfect. So I want to make sure I'm not typing for myself.
No.
Well, let's see. Let's see how she does on creating a prompt. I like that her name is Shelly. Makes her a person. So here
Oh
you go.
wow.
So
Whoa.
it takes that
Uh,
structure and builds it out.
Wow.
So this, it looks like she focused more on financial data since I said accounting, so
Yeah.
less on the documentation side. And then she said,
Yeah.
would you like to try this out or make adjustments?
I would make adjustments for accounts payable and accounts receivable. How about that?
Oh, you want it to be for accounts payable?
Yeah, like these are financial data well, I guess it is financial data, but for some reason I was thinking of like banking, like interest
Yeah.
rate, literally what's money's coming in, what money's going out, like that
Mhm.
kind of accounting.
Accounts receivable. Any other feedback we'd want to provide on the prompt?
My
I
old
mean, basically assumptive on her part for thinking it's only for senior management.
That's true.
Yeah, that's what I was
Make
thinking.
the audience who's your audience, Jessica?
A bookkeeper, not a professional accountant or senior management, somebody who just like, am I making money? Am I not making money? Like
Right.
You need 2 Ks.
Oh, you got me. This is what happens when I type live in front of technical writers.
And editors.
My greatest weakness. All right, let's see if it adjusts that. Okay. Analyze the provided financial data, focusing on the key figures and trends in accounts payable and accounts receivable, highlighting discrepancies. So it's still very much focused on like cash flow.
Yeah,
and that sort of
cash flow.
thing.
That's a great. See, the more you practice, the more you learn. That's what I should have said. That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah. As an experienced financial analyst specializing in accounts payable and receivable management, the audience is a bookkeeper with a solid financial knowledge who needs a detailed yet clear breakdown.
Correct. Nice.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
shorter. See, a concise 250-word report. It was 300 before.
You're like, get it shorter. I want a 5-word summary. Tell me
Yeah,
everything.
no, a bookkeeper doesn't want to read all that.
Yeah. But still, yeah, what do you guys think? I think it's a nice little set of rules. Obviously, they put in behind the scenes that help the GPT put things into the specific structure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Anyone else have something you want to try? Lori's going to suggest one that will help me with spelling live.
I don't need any help with spelling. Thank you.
You're like, I'm a professional. No, not for you, for me.
I could be your chat GPT.
Oh, you're too qualified, Lori. All right. Well, I have the link for that shared in the chat. I thought it was an interesting little tool to have available. If you have a paid account in ChatGPT, you can also create your own custom GPT. So if you want to create your own prompt management tool, you could. But I still think it's just a nice resource they provide you can try out, especially if you're new to prompting and thinking about how you would have a good structure that's going to provide what you need without having to spend endless time refining.
Well, let me ask a question. This is going to sound really basic, but these are the things that I get hung up on at work. So
Sure.
the dumbest thing is the next step is that you would copy all of that text and paste it into ChatGPT.
Yep.
Okay, so it doesn't send it or anything. Like you're just going back
Right.
and forth.
Yeah. This one is just for making it. So then, right, you would open a new one.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah,
I had the feeling that was like super obvious and that you so much so that you could
No,
assume.
that's okay. No, good point. So let me take a step back. Prompts are the things you put into the AI to get the stuff you want. So right, this tool is about help me put things into the right structure so that when I put this into an AI, I will get what I'm looking for. knowing there still could be some refinement.
You
Does that
know,
make
my company is now having they have something called Vertex Copilot, and it's
No.
its own, prompting thing
Nice.
for even for customers.
What does it do?
I haven't tried it. I don't know.
Oh, I was just curious. But it's that sort of like prompting, get a response kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Nice. Well, moving on. They say, well, of course, it's sort of a given if you're going to this presentation that you're kind of in on the concept of prompting AI to get content that you can use. But the why you need an AI prompt management team is really the focus of the presentation. So their points are this aligns with knowledge management. It's how we structure and organize our knowledge is how we should be structuring and organizing our AI prompts. Also, to treat your prompts like content with governance and making sure you're thinking about how that's going to be successful. So the prompts themselves are content, like there are words that you're putting together that you are using. But once you have a really good prompt, knowing that things can change still, it helps you get a consistent output, especially if you're going to be doing repeat of the same sort of information. The structured process means instead of right now where you get to see me type into the AI and throw some stuff together live, once you have a process, then you'll get higher quality interactions with the AI and more consistency. And then thinking about how you're going beyond your immediate team or yourself, this was seen as an opportunity for tech writers to be a greater asset to the organization. Will help the rest of you be better with AI. Look how incredible our prompts are. Look how we manage them. It gives the process gives confidence in what we're providing in the space. Not saying that all tech writers need to be all in on AI, but if you're in a space or a company where AI is especially valued, it doesn't hurt to be making the change instead of along for the ride. So when it comes to building this team, assuming you're all in on building one, you want to define the objective. So thinking about how you're going to be thinking about your AI prompt management. If you want accuracy, consistency, scalability in your AI content, where does that fit into your overall content management strategy as well? And they say you should focus on ensuring high quality prompts. So use your documentation expertise to build better prompts. You can use the tool like we showed where you go through and start to build prompts. But as you think about how you know information works, what's going to be effective for your users, you're going to be able to build something even better. For the content strategy, you treat them as the AI prompts as content with governance and standards. So you need to figure out how those are going to be created, stored, maintained, and updated by your team. So you're not reinventing the wheel every time you want to try to get a good response for a piece of information. Then based on that, create your prompt repository. They're pretty flexible on how you do this, whether this is just simple saving things in text or having something more robust, but whatever's going to be accessible, not just for your team but beyond. They also recommend ensuring versioning processes. So as you make updates to your prompts, as the AI changes, depending on whichever one you're using, you want to track what's happening and why you've made those updates. So basically, it's like good policies and procedures just for AI prompting. Then they're thinking about how you scale and manage those AI prompts in the future. So for the actual prompts, you want guidelines for quality, tone, and structure for consistency. So you're not having 4 people put in different things, getting completely different styles of responses. If you spent any time working with AI, you could see that there could be a great change in the type of output, the quality, the style, just because of the course of time based on who's prompting. So the more you can have that consistency, the better. The same way in tech writing that we're looking to have consistency in writing across a team of writers. It should ideally all sound like it speaks with one voice. They also recommend creating review workflows for creating, testing, and refining your AI prompts with clear checkpoints. So handling these as you would any other sort of process that you do for content. The monitoring improving phase is important. So once you build an AI prompt, to make sure it's delivering results that are useful to you and that you continue to refine, but also that it's still effective as time changes and the AI model intakes new data as it, well, I was going to say evolves. It's not doing that on its own, but as it's changed, as it's upgraded, as we go from ChatGPT 3 to 3.5 to 4 to 4.0, knowing that it's not always going to be the same, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months from now. These things are moving so quickly that we need to be ready for that refinement process. They also recommend incorporating user feedback. So whether that's your team or other people in the organization on what's working well for them, especially if you're sharing your prompts more broadly. So treating it like an agile approach, like software development. Start small, iterate, move on, make lots of changes as are necessary. So not to get too caught up on creating a really complex set of prompts as much as making small, meaningful changes. So Just to summarize key takeaways that stood out to me, I like the idea of treating prompt management as a discipline. As much like we have many disciplines within tech writing, because tech writers do so much more than just write, this would be an additional discipline within our skill set. So thinking about how we're integrating with AI in our workflows and how other people in other parts of the organization, so whether that's developers using AI for code, if they're using Microsoft Copilot alongside their development, that's something that we can contribute to. Not the code necessarily, but the prompting piece. I like the idea of handling prompts as content. So how we create those, govern, manage the process, all of that should align with how we already have documentation processes in place.
Yep.
Then they mentioned developing an AI intuition, which sounds somewhat mystical, but basically saying the more you work with AI tools, you'll think of new use cases. You'll be able to collaborate with other people who are using AI. You'll be able to think critically about ethical implications of using content that you haven't created or what sources it might be pulling from. So it's really, if you're willing to use this as a tool set, the more time you spend with it, the better you'll hone your own instincts essentially with using the tools as well, especially as they continue to change. And then, of course, the prompt engineering best practices. That's really where they recommend a good starting point. So if you're not at the, I'm going all in on making an AI team, but more the, I want to make prompts that get useful responses for me, focus on those best practices. So that structure they recommend for the reference, the task, the audience will help you get better results. So that's the last slide for me. I can share the links again if anyone joined afterwards in the chat. But I think without further ado, I'm going to hand it to Delaney to talk about Jack Molisani's presentation. Delaney, are you ready?
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Would you mind still moving the slides for me?
Not at all. I'm happily going to move
Okay.
everyone's slides.
Perfect. So hi, I'm Delaney. I am a student at UCF in FTC, and I have been to the summit twice now. This is my second year. So I wanted to be a part of the Washlines again and give a little summary of one of the presentations I went to. Okay, so the presentation I'm recapping is Resumes 101, Resume Secrets That Might Surprise You. And the keywords being that might surprise you, because I went to this session because I am a young professional starting out. And things like resume information is something that I thought was going to be very relevant to me. And it was very relevant, but something that I thought was interesting, and the reason that I am choosing to share it now, even though most of you guys have kind of been in this game for a while, is that he gave a lot of information that is really not obvious. Um, and I think there's some sort of like repetition that's expected when people are talking about things like resume tips, like, oh, here's how to do an aesthetic looking formatting. Here's how to say what you've done. Put your favorite things in this order. But he had a lot of very timely and interesting insights into the process that I think would be beneficial for anyone to hear at any point, because you kind of never know when you want to have that in your back pocket and be like, okay, if I do have to make a resume now, I should at least kind of know what I'm up against in the current sphere. So I thought it was interesting and I wanted to share. Okay, so I kind of split this up into 3 different key points. And the first is a resume's purpose, and the second is online application tips, and the third is just human factors. Okay, so the first thing that my notes kind of fit into were, what are resumes for? And the thing he was emphasizing from a perspective as someone who is a kind of a scouter of sorts. I'm not really sure how to explain it, but has been behind the curtain of recruiting and hiring. So from that perspective, he really emphasized that resumes are not about sharing what you've done. He said the purpose of a resume is only to directly match what the recruiter is looking for. And kind of wanting to do a word for word. Okay, in the job description, it says X, Y, and Z skills. So in your resume, you should write in that order 3 times. You demonstrate X skill, 1 time you did Y skill, and 1 time you did Z skill. So it's not really about, oh, here are all the cool things I've done, or even this is what I'm most proud of in my career. It's more of like, this is exactly what they want, and I'm going to show it to them right in their face. Um, and the second tip he said was the importance of researching. He even went as far as to say, try to find someone who works there. And he was like, it's kind of easy to find people with the internet right now. So reach out to someone who is an employee in a position that either you're interviewing for or like would be in a team similar to yours and kind of talk to them and be like, realistically, what skills do you need on your team? What are they looking for? Like, you know your boss is better. What should I do? And that's kind of difficult. I think there is, I think, a limit to what you can do in that regard, but I thought it was interesting and bold. And he said in interviews, they usually ask you like a tell me about yourself question. And he said the thing he likes to say in response to that is saying, well, would you mind telling me a little bit about what you're looking for so I know the context of what to share with you? And that's something that once he said it seemed very obvious, but I was like, wow, that's true. They don't really want you to tell them about yourself. They want you to tell them how different elements about yourself would be a good candidate. So I just thought that was interesting to be put so bluntly. And of course, he said all of this, you should be informing your resume with research about the company. If you know they value certain skills or have certain values, you should show how you also reflect those in your resume. The second portion of this presentation he gave was kind of about online application tips, since a lot of hiring and job processes are fully online now. He said try to avoid mass recruiting websites because it's a easy way to kind of get lost in the stream. And I didn't know this, and I don't know if you guys maybe knew this, but apparently sites like LinkedIn and Handshake and Indeed and anything kind of like that often has auto permission to just give your resume to whoever they think matches. But again, the algorithm's idea of what matches may not necessarily be the jobs you want to apply for. And instead of it being kind of like, oh, like you would think, oh, it gets my name out there more. And he was saying instead, it just kind of bogs you down with a lot of things that one, you are not interested in, and two, like it's just making yourself
Elaine,
a statistic. Yes.
about Indeed. My company uses Indeed,
Hmm.
and you can apply through Indeed to the company.
Yes.
So it's not just generalized dispersion.
From what I understood, there is that, but he was saying turn off like a secondary setting on the website that
Ah,
once you apply to one job, they can't take that resume and use it for other things,
ah.
if that makes sense.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Not that I'll ever apply for another job. At 70, I don't think I'm going to get another job.
So that's kind of what he meant by that. Like you would upload your resume and your application for a specific job, like that you're actually interested.
Yeah,
And some of the sites on the back end can take that information and kind of like auto apply you to other things
oh,
and kind
that's
of like
nice.
a matching system. Um, so he said make sure that's turned off, which I did not even know about before he said that. So
Yeah,
I was like, okay, I would never have known that. Um, Yeah, and the other thing he said about websites like this, is the good thing about things like Indeed and LinkedIn is you can find other people from the companies more easily. So he said if you can do a little bit more research and, like, find the HR admin or the hiring manager or someone, who works in the company and maybe has some sort of, like, knowledge about that, he said go ahead and reach out to them on sites like LinkedIn or Indeed or any other professional website because maybe they'll be more willing to, look at your resume if you also send it to them directly, which again is a bold tip, but I think is good. And he also said when you are probably going to end up applying to jobs through these sites, like as you said, a lot of companies use it as their first or only way to apply.
yep.
Um, and he said, if doing that, make sure you're optimizing your resume for AI, which I thought was interesting since Bethany's just been talking about AI. That, and I think every presentation this came up. Most companies now are using different AI programs to kind of screen the resumes before a person sees them. The place I intern at right now, they have us like send updated versions of our resume just so they can check it for us using their system. Um, so one thing he said was to make sure you're not hiding your contact info, even if you have your like let's say like you have your email or your phone number like highlighted in what you think is like a highlighted box to make it easier for a person to see. Elements like that can actually hide your contact info from these AI systems. So instead of it being like, okay, if a person read it, it would be bold, or if a person read it, it would be clearly sectioned off. If some of these programs can't yet, I'm sure that'll change, but can't yet differentiate that. So instead of it being like, oh, I bolded this so they can see it, you're accidentally hiding yourself. And from my personal like seeing the back end of one of these systems, a problem I've seen is that they're like confusing like your first like the last place you worked with your name. So there's a lot of like weird kind of mix-ups that are happening. So just trying to make your contact info and your name very clear and not hidden in any like nice looking design elements may actually benefit you since a person is not going to be seeing it first, more likely than not. And I'm sure that will just continue for more and more companies. So I thought that was good to know, because again, that's something you kind of don't know unless someone who has access to the back end tells you about that. And kind of similar to that, and kind of just an always tip is to put your most important information first. And what he said for the benefit of AI was to make sure you're using exact wording. And he was giving examples about how people who have expertise in a field, because sometimes the hiring managers who are writing that, like the posting, we need someone to come and work for us, are not the experts in the subject. So you may write in your resume like some expert skills that you have in a little like more sophisticated terminology for the field, but an AI program is just like screaming the exact words of what they want and screaming exact words on your resume. So you may be saying exactly what they want in a more sophisticated way that you think is showing your expertise, but the AI doesn't understand that that's what it is, and they just throw your resume out as not having those skills at all. So he was saying making sure you're using exact wording for what they are asking, even though you may know you could elevate it or you may know you could add to it, may help you not get rejected in that initial AI screening. So I thought all of that was very interesting. And of course, human factors. He said even with AI, people are more important than algorithms. And he kind of said this like throughout the whole presentation, but he said, whenever possible, find a real person. Even though AI is screening your resume, even though you're applying through online, no matter what, try to follow up as much as you can. Even if it's just like calling a number you don't think is going to get you anywhere, just trying to follow up, even when using LinkedIn, even when using Indeed, will increase your odds because, again, so many people are applying through these things. So, any way you can find contact with another human being, and it'll differentiate yourself and at least give you more of a chance. Some other tips I thought was interesting was about sabotaging your resume, and I'm sure we've all heard people being like, "Don't undersell yourself, make sure you say important things." But he added some interesting advice to this. One of the things he said was to not include a picture of yourself. And I know there's some different practices with different industries, and he said there are some specific industries that want a picture, but he said in, like, the US market that a photo usually is not, standard and is usually not helpful. He said some places in Europe, they prefer a photo, but he said for the US, it's only hurts you to add a photo. And he was saying you don't know what internal biases the person may have. They probably might not even know, but, by adding a photo, they're automatically getting an image of you that isn't about your skill set. So he said, for most situations, it's not necessary, and adding it would just detract from your, like, application and your skills you have and what you can bring to the company. So I thought that was interesting and a good tip. He also said that they're not hiring based on resumes, they're rejecting based on resumes, which was a perspective from someone who does hire that I thought was interesting. And it's good to know that, like, at the end of the day, no matter what you've done, and no matter what you put on your resume, um, they're just looking for someone to fill a specific need that they have. So kind of keeping a perspective of what they need while you're doing the application process will probably help you streamline what you need to include. So yeah, that was the 3 big points that I kind of summarized. I don't know if anyone had any questions or stories to add. I didn't really
you
have a
also go
fun
in-
interactive part.
You also happen to go into the importance of networking.
Yes, he did. He mentioned that networking is kind of the most important thing you can do and that most jobs are secured through networking. Um, but I think and not that that's a given, but I do think he was trying to talk about other factors because I did go to entire presentations that were just on networking and how important it
Oh,
is. But I
okay.
think he was trying to say when you've already tried that and it's failed or when that's not an option. I think he was trying to give other, like, practical advice, but he did emphasize that that is the best way to do it always, and that is the most reliable way to do it, and that is how most people get positions and move up and things like that.
Yes, and I can vouch for it.
Me too, Lori. I've gotten the job I have now because of a referral and a recommendation from two different people put me on the
Oh,
right
I
track for
got
this
laid
job.
off from my last job almost 10 years ago. And through my work with STC, a couple people knew me in the local chapter. And I got an immediate call like, we need you now. So I basically walked from one job to the other.
That's the dream. I mean, not to get laid off, but to immediately have the
But
next
actually,
option.
it really was the best thing because I got an immediate $3,000 a year raise because the bank hardly pays.
Nice.
And this is a private company. Private companies pay better than banks, just for FYI. And my income has gone up every year, so I'm a happy camper.
The success story. I wanted to call out a couple things from the chat about the photo piece. There are, like you mentioned, countries, especially in Europe, that favor a photo on the resume. I said most of the recruiters I know will automatically just exclude a resume if it has a photo, and Nicole pointed out there's a legal problem they're trying to avoid.
Yeah, so if you apply, if let's say somebody applies for a job and they have their photo on the resume, and then you do 4 rounds of interviews and they don't get it, that person is highly likely to come back if they are this type of person and claim discrimination because of whatever was in their photo, right? So yeah, not to say this person isn't discriminated against, right? Because they've gone through 4 rounds of interviews and maybe they were, but many companies, just don't even want to open the door to that problem. So I know it, whenever I got resumes with people's pictures, I just threw them away immediately. Like I knew I couldn't proceed. I didn't even know what their name was. I didn't even look at their resume. I saw a picture and I threw it away because it's just we all know we have biases, and to start off on the first foot of a physical bias, no company wants to do that. So I think it is strange in other countries where they encourage it. And I have heard in some other countries where like they encourage you to put like who your parents are and where they're from,
Where they
things
work.
like that. Yeah, which is weird. So yeah, everywhere has their own thing, but in the United States, because you can't discriminate based on looks and first impressions and things like that, do not put your picture on there. Do
Yeah,
not.
and
Like
I
not
thought
even
that
a
was very good to know because I had not been
yeah,
told that, and I would hate for anyone to like get your resume thrown out over something like that, when that could easily be
yeah.
avoided.
Well, and I've noticed a lot of like the templates on Canva and stuff, they have like a little spot for your picture and they're all designy and cutesy. And I'm like, no, no, no.
It's a trap.
That's a no for me. Which, I mean, internally, if there was like a promotion you were up for, or you were running for, head of the, party planning committee or something, you wanted to put your picture on there, fine. You already have the job. They already know what you look like, right? If there's discrimination, it's probably already happening to you, or not. And so that is a little bit of a different situation, but yeah, it's just something to think about.
Yeah, it is interesting because I know we do at my company that we do a lot of overseas hiring, and when we get the resume packages, they all have pictures, and it's always something that we find odd. And it's funny because even when I'm looking at them, I try not to look at the picture. It's like I've been trained not to do that. So it's actually quite jarring in the US to see a picture on a resume.
Ooh, we have a question in the chat. What do you guys think about giving recruiters your resume with a QR code to your LinkedIn?
Love it.
Fancy.
Yeah. Seems like a good idea, especially if you don't have a super unique name that's really easy to find on LinkedIn. Or there's 10 people that all share your name.
And a quick time check. It is 7:53. We've
Another
got
thing to
2
put
more
on there is
presentations as well.
a link to your GitHub site where you have other stuff that could be used as samples of your work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a cool idea. All right. I think we're on to John then. John, are you ready?
All right.
Or are you still
Yes.
are you still on the road?
So I'm not on the road. I am in my car, but I'm not on the road. So I can present. But yeah, I will also turn my camera on.
I feel like we're
Okay,
on a
I
segment
think I'm
called
here.
on the road with John. It looks like you're joining us from San Francisco in your car.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I drove to San Francisco. That's where I'm at right now. It's still bright over there.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, all lines up. My alibi.
Mhm.
But anyways, yeah. So my section, and I loved hearing about the other presentations so far. And hello everyone again. Mine will be on exploring policies and procedures, which was a panel done by the STC Policies and Procedures SIG. And so with this panel, I wanted to recap it because it was my first time presenting at the STC Summit, and I'm grateful to have been on a panel organized by Anne-Marie Queenie and the Policies and Procedures SIG, of course. I'm also joined by Kelly Smith and Marilyn Wolf. And I also got to learn a lot from them just by being part of it and collaborating with them, hearing their sections and everything as well. And I was able to speak a bit about how I do policies and procedures in my current workplace, which made me feel like, oh, time flies. It's already been a couple years that I've been there now.
Mhm.
And also hear about how Kelly and Marilyn have also done policies and procedures work at their own workplaces and their own different industries. So, a little summary of the panel itself. The policies and procedures panelists presented insiders' perspectives on working in policy and procedures in technical communication or as technical writers in their respective fields. So for Kelly, she's a senior technical writer at, oh, sorry.
Sorry. I thought I was ready for the next slide. I got all eager, John. Sorry, we're back to your
Oh,
slide.
no, you're good. I appreciate the excitement. No, all good. So Kelly talked about business continuity at her workplace. I talked about policy and procedures in the aerospace and defense industry. And Marilyn talked about it at her not-for-profit health organization. And Anne-Marie helped moderate and host the presentation as well. And then, yep, next will be the topics that were covered. So I'm kind of going to verbally walk through it since it was a panel and there were a lot of different insights shared. So it was very much a kind of conversational, discussion-based presentation, diving through an overview of like everyone's different fields, everyone's different topic of interest, and then also, what does the work look like at everyone's company in everyone's different field? Since TechCom spans a lot of different places, in specific policies and procedures, how do things meet compliance? How do they meet safety standards? How do the documents look uniform? How can, the products be made sure to be uniform and have safety standards and procedure documentation as well? Not just informational, but instructional, step-based, how-to based, talking about a process. How do those documents come into play in each industry in their own unique ways? So yeah, each presenter talked about business continuity, aerospace and defense, and health kind of contribute to all of this. With Kelly talking about business continuity, it's a field that he often finds that people don't necessarily think of immediately when they think of business, but he talked about how it's basically, how can companies prepare for either changes within the company or within the industry or hiring or employment changes, staffing changes, or even something as big as the pandemic. How can companies have a framework that kind of protects them and is ready to kind of usher them into a new state or pick them back up if something big changes? How can the business, continue from a big change or from the ground up? So Kelly brought a lot of interesting information about how, the documentation that's in place, and the fact that there is, especially for big companies, there should and needs to be effective documentation in place, being ready for policy changes, steps to take if you need to change policies, um, and procedures on how to adapt things if, large events happen. And then in aerospace and defense, I talked about how at LTRS Technologies, I've been writing different procedure-based documents, whether it be operation manuals, or helping edit and review them as well. Operations manuals, maintenance manuals, procedure documents, how-tos, reference guides, things like that, very much procedure-based documentation. And policies kind of take a play into that as well. And because it's working with, with L3Harris and aerospace and defense, it can be things between communication systems where you want to protect the safety, you want to ensure the safety of information being transmitted, and the information of, the company itself, or the government and any customer as well. And that same principle applies to equipment, such as vehicles or aircraft or space systems, things like that. For those, safety and good policy making is definitely a big part of that as well, where you need to have warnings for, is this dangerous to use? Or this part, do you need to handle it with care? Do you need multiple people to handle it? What steps do you need to ensure safety? Cautions as well. Do you need to have certain types of equipment to handle this? Do you need to have certain types of gear or certain tools to make sure that you're handling this the correct way and not in a way that can cause harm or even worse? And then just notes as well throughout the document also, just on things to keep in mind as you're either maintaining or keeping this document or the equipment up to date, things like that, just to ensure quality as well, and that things are meeting compliance standards, especially if the customer is the government, making sure that it meets standards, that meet that level of quality that they want. So yeah, policies, a lot of procedure work happens at L3Harris and defense companies, as well as policy work kind of tying into that to ensure, that quality basis. And then with health, needless to say, a lot of policies are there in place, lots of bodies of documentation to ensure patient safety, or proper usage of equipment, or even in the case of software systems, just proper management of patients' data, of company information, all of that, how to use it, just making sure that patients are in good hands, that patients, have their livelihoods protected, all of that. And of course, procedures play a large part in the health industry as well. A lot of instructional documentation for someone either using a piece of equipment for the first time or something similar to something that they've used, but they need very specific, extra knowledge on how to operate this or operate a new function of a system, or how to operate it for patients of different kinds, things like that. Yeah, a lot of great information covered on each presenter in their field, and then I dropped some example questions underneath that were asked, like how each of us entered each of our fields and gained policy and procedure work experience, what the difference is between policies and procedures, which I kind of talked about a bit earlier. Policies are for ensuring quality, compliance, safety, things like that. Very much the kind of quality control documents and safety insurance documents. While procedures are those kind of how-to, step-by-step, here's what you need to do to make this work kind of documents. And then what trends are you seeing in policies and procedures? Each of us then kind of dove into talking about each of our industries and just how that kind of plays a role in things. What we're seeing, including, AI being more prolific as well, even some discussion on, policies in place for AI itself and making sure that, if AI is used in our companies, how can it be used ethically, effectively, things like that. Then the last couple just talked about how policy and procedures play a role for, companies where a big change might happen, or especially in a situation where, like the pandemic, COVID and post-COVID, or security issues involving working at home. Then Kelly proceeded to talk a lot about what I mentioned earlier about a business continuity takes a lot of that into account when it comes to the picking the pieces back up sort of thing, or bringing up a company from one state of being to another state of being. And our documentation, without documentation for that, everyone might be scrambling. And so that's when the documentation teams really, they bring out all their value in a phase of heavy change like that. And then the last question that was a big focus was what tips do you have for working with SMEs, subject matter experts, each of us talked about that, and I was it gave me some good reminiscing of how I've been able to tackle that in my own time. A lot of it is you can have subject matter experts who are easy, friendly to work with and everything, but you also have some who can be either busy all the time or tough to get a hold of, or even just you know stressed with their current occupation that might not have time or might not have energy to sit with you for half an hour long meeting. So I talked about tips my own coworkers and bosses have talked to me about working with SMEs, including being direct, bringing a list of questions to them that they can tackle in a short amount of time, and just being specific with what you need, how they can help you, and kind of bringing a draft to them rather than brainstorming with them, so that they can work with you easier or correct if needed, versus kind of drawing things from scratch with you, since their time and energy is valuable, or they may not always be easiest to work with. But it does help the collaboration process between tech writers and subject matter experts if you kind of know how to speak their language as well and get what you want while they get what they want, or it's a mutual relationship that you can foster there. So yeah, it was overall really good presentation. I was glad I could present on it, and be joined by fellow panelists, speak at the summit for the first time, and yeah, I'm really grateful that I could share bits and pieces of that panel as well, and feel heard from the other presenters. That was a great experience too. So yeah, those are bits and pieces from the session I wanted to recap at the summit.
All right, then I think Marilyn, you are up next.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right. Thank you, Julia, Delaney, and John. You guys, I learned a lot just from that recap. And I'm gonna go on to mine right now. I think that this is a really good panel to discuss to tie everything up because it was on the very last day on Sunday. And it was a little informal. There weren't any slides or anything. It was just if we had any questions from the weekend, they would like answer them for us. And I found that the advice that I got throughout the weekend were pretty consistent. So I wanted to share like the highlights of what we discussed. And since it was very informal, this presentation is just based off of my notes because it was all verbal discussions. And because of that, I did use some slides from another presentation just because everything just tied in so well. Okay, so the most important thing that I learned on my first day at Summit that Friday was the automatic tracking system. These are some stats saying that, many employers use the automatic tracking system, and I wasn't sure what this is. And I am a young professional and a student, and just getting through the ATS was something that I found very valuable because I didn't know how this system worked. And obviously, a lot of companies apparently use them. All right, so the 2-column method for cover letters, ATS and hiring managers will love you. So some advice that I got is that if you are handing like your resume to the recruiter themselves, then you can use the columns. But if you go through an ATS, it's better to use bullet points so that the ATS system will be able to read it. Another advice I got was also to not use color because the automatic tracking system will think that it's malicious code. But if you're handing a physical paper to a recruiter, then you can use color, and it might be even smart to color code your resume and tailor it to the company that you want to work for. For example, if you want to work for Texas Instrument, you might want to use the colors red and gray so that the recruiter can like imagine you there in the company with them. And this like the ATS was something that like was brought back during everything you want to know about finding a job but were too afraid to ask, just because I feel like it may be very new to people like me who are students and are new to the job market. And this method is basically you copy the descriptions of what they want and you put it on the left, and then to the right you write how you have that skill and how you've practiced the skill before. And then this is a real quote I got from this panel. Hiring managers are goldfishes. So a don't is to say, dear company, I want to grow. Like, no, you have to get straight to the point. Another advice that I got was to don't say passionate, don't say that it's your dream job, because the recruiters know, especially if you are working for a bigger company, like they know that you are passionate and that you want this job. Instead, just highlight your strengths and why you would be a good fit for this company based on the skills that you have. How to get noticed by recruiters. So all the questions that I got from this panel were basically how to get the job first and how to get noticed by recruiters. I think Jack, he was the one that talked the most about this because he has a lot of experience, obviously. But he says to volunteer to write for a nonprofit or even for STC, there are a lot of opportunities available to volunteer and write. You can reach out to nonprofits and volunteer to write their policies if you'd like. And then another advice that I got from this panel was to polish your LinkedIn, leverage the skills section by prioritizing your relevant skills, and then don't be afraid to ask your peers and coworkers for endorsements. And then the first panel that I went to, Mastering the Arts and Science of the Cover Letter, Nathaniel actually went through the ATS to show us what the recruiters are looking on the other side of the screen. So these are some examples of keywords that you might want to put on your resume to tailor it to the job that you're looking for specifically. Okay, so now you're in and you have the job. What next? Again, the questions were very large range. And so we did touch about how to protect your data if you're a freelancer or a self-employed worker. And, the first two seem obvious, but, nowadays anyone can face issues with cybersecurity and face cyber attacks. So don't use unsecured or unknown Wi-Fi. Obviously, use a VPN if you're connected from a coffee shop, let's say, or anywhere on the go at the airport. Because you just don't know who has access to your data and who doesn't. And a point that Jack brought up was to purchase cyber insurance, which is just insurance just in case any of the paperwork or the sensitive information that you're working with as a technical writer gets leaked, you can't be sued for it. So this is just a step to protect yourself once you're a technical writer and you're not working for a big company that offers that protection if you're a freelancer. All right, this is the last slide. Obviously, the negotiation, it is, kind of taboo to talk about pay, but Jack did touch on the subject, and these aren't the real numbers, but he basically said how a company once asked him for this amount in 4 weeks, and they said no, they said the hourly rate was too high, so he asked again for the same amount, but to extend the duration to 8 weeks, and they said yes. And this can also go the opposite way. Like if you accept a contract, you are the expert. So you have to make sure that what you're accepting is feasible in the amount of time that they're offering. So if the contract says that you have to write this policy in 1 month, and then you accept it, you go into it and you realize that it cannot be written in 1 month, then you have to take the initiative before to really look over your contract and make sure that what you're doing is feasible. And then don't be afraid to ask to meet with your boss to evaluate your performance and ask for a raise. This is if you're working for a company, it's just speaking up and advocating for yourself and being confident is what he really talked about. And finally, another tip that I got from this panel was to add conferences into my contracts. Attending conferences can cost thousands of dollars a year. They're very expensive, but these conferences are so important for career development, and learning new technologies. So, negotiate with your company to add attending conferences into your contracts. And even recently, I talked to a recruiter who said that she was even able to negotiate them paying for her education. So always look for new opportunities and areas for career development when searching for a job. You just have to really advocate for yourself, and you have to be confident. And that's basically it. Do you guys have any questions?
There are questions for previous presenters. You can ask them now.
Yeah, thank you, Marilyn. I did want to share. I did not get that session of Nathaniel's, and it sounds really good. But I did find the slides from it, so I shared those in the chat. Thank you for covering all that.
Yeah, lots of great information. And I do enjoy how it kind of covered a lot of, I feel like it was a good finisher. It covered a lot of scope of different things.
Mm-hmm. Not seeing any questions so far.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, I had honestly, I had a really good time. Obviously, my favorite two presentations were the resume one, as well as that last one that I just presented, but I didn't want to do two resume ones.
You're like, we'll work it in. Cover both.
Work it in, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you enjoyed Summit. I thought it was a really good summit with a lot of variety, and I like that they focused on practical takeaways for a lot of the sessions.
I agree.
Yeah, it was a great summit for sure. I guess a question on my end, curious, who thinks that they might either go again or try to go next year, if able?
I definitely want to go.
If able, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody know where it is? Or is it posted yet? Or
To be announced, I believe.
okay. I was just
Yeah,
thinking, speaking of
it's
time
not
being
posted.
weird. Okay. I
Yeah,
was
I was
like,
checking earlier.
I don't know. I was just thinking, I'm pretty sure I checked this the other day and I can't remember anything about it. So I'm glad this is one of those things that I didn't check.
Mm-hmm. Nope, it's
Like
not
we
out
went
yet.
to-
I think there was talk of, though, of having it in a similar location somewhere, if not the Midwest, at least kind of centrally located, that would be cost effective for attendees.
Yeah, they haven't updated the website.
Not yet.
I
I
will
used
say
to-
that if they do the virtual continuum thing again, I really
Mhm.
recommend that. That was really good to go to this week.
Oh, can we put you on the spot,
Oh.
Nicole? Can you give us
Oh,
a
that's
debrief
right.
on Continuum? I really wanted to go, but it overlapped with 100 meetings.
Same here.
Yeah, no, totally understand. I really like it. It's a full day, so they start at 8 a.m., they end at 6, and I think that in future iterations, because this was the first one, they would build in more breaks because it really was just like back to back to back to back. You got a lunch break, but like otherwise, it was just one after the other. Unless your speaker ended early, and then you could go get a Coke. But so, all of that aside, the content was really great. I thought that it was mostly about content strategy and AI, and generative AI, and like building your own large language models and small language models and things like that, and using AI to do that, or using it to manage your content strategy. And again, it sounds like, there was I think it's the same presentation that's given at Summit about the prompting, or at least by the same person, like how to best write the prompts and things like that. So that was an interesting thing too, to sort of experience and see. But it was really valuable. I don't know how much of it will translate to my work, but I don't think it ever hurts to learn something, particularly because we could all be laid off tomorrow, right? So, just having,
Inspiration.
yeah. And, there are ways that we do use AI. There are ways that, we're in the Microsoft environment, so Copilot runs our life now, but like, that all that said, you know, as careful as we have to be using it and using outside sources for AI, it still was really, really valuable to go, particularly about, you know, your content strategy and how you can use AI to help you and build you in your project planning and things like that. So that was really cool.
Thank you for sharing, Nicole. Sorry we put you on the spot, but
No worries. It's
glad to
also
hear
like
it
a
was
fraction of the
worthwhile.
price, right? It was only $150 for members or something.
Mhm.
So, you know, for a full day of seminars, I think that was pretty good. And, you know, if your company won't spring for Summit the whole weekend, you know, maybe they would spring for like a day of that. So if it comes around again, highly recommend.
Yeah, it's a great option.
Yeah, literally the only disadvantage was I didn't find out about it enough in advance, and it was a Tuesday. Like I was like, I would have to cancel a whole lot of things. So I don't know, like
Right.
maybe in the future I think it would be easier to do like on a Friday or something where
I
it's
will.
almost like, you know.
Yeah, I don't think that they did a very good job of advertising it. I even struggled to find it on the website. Like I just had to go to the search bar and click on continuum because it wasn't in any of the menus.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I get that it's the first one and it's the first attempt. So hopefully they'll work all those kinks out and people will have a
Yeah.
little more notice next time.
Very
Especially
exciting.
since you said the content was good, and that's really the part that matters most for the
Yeah,
attendees.
that was fantastic. Yeah, I know they had some really noteworthy speakers.
Mhm.
So you know, you're getting quality content. It's not like
Yeah, I
sign
think
up for a lunch and learn for 30
yeah.
minutes and it's kind of flat. Yeah.
Yeah, it's rough to do it to them like that because I couldn't do it either. I might have done it because I know it's those speakers.
Mhm. Well,
Yeah.
we'll hope for the next one.
Jessica Krieger from our chapter was the speaker.
She
She did a great
was.
presentation. Yeah, she
Yeah.
did a great job.
If you ever get a chance to hear Rahel Bailey, she's really good too.
Yeah, she was the keynote speaker. So she spoke for about an hour. And it was interesting. She was talking about, you know, content strategy and how that's sort of changing our jobs as writers, you know, and it's really interesting that she's doing that because we're going through some transition at work of like roles and we're building out new roles and things like that. So it was good to have sort of those tools and suggestions of how our roles are developing and
Mhm.
who's going to step into that kind of stuff. So that was really relevant to what we're going through right now.
Yeah, that's one thing I miss about. I used to did contract work for many, many, many years. And when I was a contractor, I was able to go to every summit, every conference, every opportunity. And when I'm a captured writer, I can't get the budget for it.
Captured writer. Could live in captivity.
That's what I do. I live in captivity.
Hey. Well, Julie, do you want me to move to the closing slide?
Yes. Thank you to our presenters. You did an excellent job and I learned a lot. And also thank you everybody for coming. I hope you have a great night.
You too. Thank you for having us.
Have a good night, everyone.
Uh,
Great presentations. Have a good night, everyone.
Yeah. Have a great night, everybody. Thanks.